Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Chad and Corey here, getting an update from AbraSilver Resource Corp, traded on the TSX.V under the ticker ABRA, and on the OTCQX under the ticker ABBRF. And we're joined today with the President and CEO of AbraSilver Resource, John Miniotis, and the Chief Geologist, Dave O'Connor. And John and Dave, great to have you guys on the show. I guess, John, we'll kick it off with just a high-level overview of some of the drill results that you just released on the 30th of September. This is at your Diablillos project in Argentina, and some of it is really focused on the northeast extension, kind of beyond the known mineralization at Oculto, and the southwest extension beyond JAC. So, guys, from a high level, walk us through what you're learning from these drill results.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chad, and thanks always for having us on. Certainly have lots of news flow to cover here, so looking forward to providing you with an update. Yeah, in terms of the latest press release that we announced here recently, the drill program, as you mentioned, we're really focused on two main areas around the existing deposits. At the main Oculto deposit, we're focused on mineralization towards the northeast. And then on JAC, we continuously are stepping that out, expanding that to the south. Yeah, I guess in terms of the holes we announced, so if you look at the press release, hole 17 was one of the holes that we announced in the northeast. It hit 7.5 meters of about 190 grams per ton of silver. That was importantly, it's starting at a downhole depth of only about 116 meters. So, very good results. I'd say, even though those grades aren't the best grades we've ever announced, I think what's important to recognize here is that this is in an area of the pit that's currently being classified as waste in the pre-feasibility study. So it's very, very important. I think this is an area where you get mineralization like this, of course, and it's shallow, would certainly help lower the strip ratio, converts waste into near surface ore at very good grades. And so, the northeast is an area where we're continuing to drill out, looking to continue to convert waste into ore and also ultimately step out the pit in that direction. And then the other area, as we talked about, JAC towards the south, of course, we're consistently stepping out there. It's still open in multiple directions. In these holes that we just announced in particular, I think it was hole 20, we announced, again, a broad intercept starting at only 68 meters in depth. And that included grades of about 130 grams per ton over 5 meters. And so good results from JAC. But yeah, it's still open in multiples area towards the south. This is just in one direction. It's still open in several directions there. So lots more news flow ahead of us, both at JAC, at Oculto. And then most importantly, of course, I think Dave will talk about some of the geophysics and some other new targets here that we're very, very excited about.
Just a quick follow-up on this drill program. Figure 1, we can see where all these drill holes are located, and we can see all the other drilling that's going on here. This is a sizable drill program for this year, and it seems like we're still early on. So approximately how many more meters are still to be released and still to be drilled within this overall program?
Yeah, great question. So we've drilled actually about 9,000 meters out of the 20,000. So our drilling is progressing very well. Now, there are a lot of holes, I'd say, at the lab at the moment. I think right now we're drilling around about hole 50, and we just announced hole 24. So there's 25 holes that are sort of in progress that have recently been completed, and some of those are obviously at the lab. So there's a number of holes that have been drilled that we still don't have results for. So that's good news. That means there's a lot of results on the horizon here over the coming weeks and months ahead. And yeah, we expect to complete all 20,000 meters by January or certainly by February of next year. So still several months into the program. And again, lots of targets that will be drilling over that time.
Well, Dave, I want to bring you in the mix here too, just to focus just a little bit more on the JAC area. When we had talked last, there was a couple holes to the south of JAC that actually went up in grade. So while you're expecting to find the limits of the deposit, some of them actually grew in grade, and there's still that really interesting area of focus between JAC and Alpaca, what we were dubbing JAC North for a while, but it's really the connecting of those two areas. Are there going to be some holes drilled in those areas that are still to be released?
Yeah, the JAC zone essentially strikes southwest And the Alpaca zone is essentially northeast of the end of the JAC zone. So there's a perpendicular trend going off towards Alpaca, which we have drilled, but we don't have results for yet. And there's a whole bunch of holes around the end of JAC Southwest. As John said, it's open in several directions. Complicated structure, which is interesting, useful. But we've stopped drilling there because we don't want to carry on drilling without the results of previous holes. Now we have 3 drill rigs operating at the Oculto Northeast area until we get the results back from JAC, and then we can go back and follow up on those results.
All right. So again, still a lot of drilling to come. And within this news release, there's also this other component to it, which is a new porphyry target. You have a couple figures in here. This porphyry target is under that Cerro Blanco area. Look, we can see just how big this anomaly could be within some of this work that you have done. But now, with the porphyry potential, how do you balance out moving that potentially new area forward while still drilling out and around the resource areas?
We have new partners, Kinross being one of them, and they are very enthusiastic. In fact, several major companies that have visited the porphyry zone, porphyry complex area that we call it, are interested in the porphyry, and everybody's been saying that we should drill it. We've been holding off drilling it because we wanted to expand the resources, the cyanide leachable resources around JAC and Oculto. Now that we have the Kinross come in and putting in their $10 million, they want us to spend 25% of that in the porphyry zone, which is fine by us. We did the Triton survey, which came up with some very interesting chargeability and resistivity zones. I don't call them anomalies, zones, which indicate steeply dipping intrusives, I guess you want. They're too big to be anything else. Intrusives in the area. Now, I wouldn't put too much weight on it unless that was supported by surface geochemistry, and it's supported very well by surface geochemistry in the Cerro Blanco zone, where there is up to 800 grams per ton molybdenum, plus up to 3 grams per ton gold on surface. And adjacent to that, there's between 0.3 and 0.6% copper in shallow drilling. So with the security of that behind us, we then think that the Triton Geophysical survey has come up with some pretty interesting results that warrant drilling.
Well, and John, I may throw this question over to you about this Cerro Blanco target, Cerro Viejo, these porphyry complex targets. There's been a couple commenters on social media mentioning that in general, precious metals companies are getting too enamored with copper and that they need to keep their focus on precious metals and that they shouldn't be spending and blowing out their brains trying to go drill for copper, which is very deep and very expensive. You had a great response when I said, what would you say to people that are worried about that with AbraSilver? And I'd love you just to feel that you're just really testing the thesis here to possibly entice a larger party. So maybe just speak to the focus you have on copper isn't a sea change in the company. It's really more of a testing the thesis.
Yeah, no, that's a very important point, I think, that you bring up there. So yeah, we're not repositioning at all AbraSilver in the name. Obviously, we're a silver gold focus. We're no question a precious metals focused company. But yeah, as I mentioned, when you have a property like this at Diablillos with numerous targets, of course, you want to maximize the value of the project. And so if you have a big copper porphyry target, such as this one, you owe it to your shareholders to drill it, test it out, see what the grades look like, get more information. How deep is this? What are the grades? What's the size potential? All of that can only be answered through drilling. And so with this big target now, we're proposing, we will be drilling 2 deep holes at a minimum. And these holes will be between, 700 meters to maybe even 1 kilometer deep. So big, deep holes here. With that, we'll get lots and lots of valuable information. And then that will allow us to then revisit what's the best path forward for, maximizing value of this potential porphyry target here. Do you want to immediately bring in a partner? Do you want to maybe drill another 1 or 2 more holes to see the grades? But yeah, ultimately, I fully agree. Drilling a big, deep porphyry is very, very expensive. It's best for larger companies to do that. And just like we did at La Cuepita, we drilled a few deep holes there ourselves. We saw there was a target there that was definitely worthwhile following up on. And then we brought Teck as a major partner. And of course, it's in very capable hands now, Teck making good progress there. and they actually expect to start drilling there the next field season within the next couple months. So similarly with this, I mean, we want to drill a few deep holes, understand what we have, and then, of course, we'll reevaluate and figure out the optimum path forward once we have more information.
So, David, from a geology front, there any other assets that our listeners might know about, either in Argentina or in this general area, that are of a potentially similar nature of a porphyry down at depth?
Well, at Diablillos itself, we know that there's a porphyry at depth. We know there's a porphyry directly beneath Oculto because we have fragments of porphyry with the mineralization in the breccias that have come up from depth, but that's considered too deep. However, the root zones in the sulfide area beneath the oxides has very high silver, gold, and copper, particularly copper, beneath the oxide zone. So the root zones are interesting, and because there's a lot of copper and precious metals in the Oculto porphyry, we think that being part of the same cluster, the Cerro Blanco, Cerro Viejo porphyry may have similar styles of mineralization. We know that there's copper there anyway in the drilling, and we know that there's gold there in drilling as well at Cerro Viejo. So it's a good target. Of course, there are other porphyries around. There's Taka Taka, the first quantum porphyry, but that's a mega porphyry, but about 0.4 grams per ton, 0.4% copper. And I understand that First Quantum are going to start developing that.
Well, Dave, just one more. I think you make a great point that in these porphyry systems, it's not just copper. There's often a lot of gold. And if people like precious metals exposure, I don't think gold's going to ruin anybody's day if you find a lot of that along with the copper. But you do have another gold target kind of closer to the Oculto and JAC area, and that's Cerro Bio. And we haven't talked about that as much recently. Are there going to be some holes into Cerro Bio that are still yet to report, which has more of a gold signature?
We're drilling there right now. There's a historical reverse circulation hole, which got 11 grams per ton over 1 meter, plus some lower grade material down the hole. Reverse circulation drilling sometimes gives you weird results, and we don't have a lot of confidence in that, but we're drilling 2 holes there to determine, A, whether or not it exists, and if it does exist, what is the trend of mineralization. So yes, that is a target. Really, there's the Cerro Bio Oculto Northeast area. And just to mention that we've had some specialist structural geologists out there doing their mapping job, and they presented us with a report with their suggested targets and their silicified zones of mineralization. We've compared that with the information that we know from our experience, and we've modified their proposed drill program and cited a few holes, well, about a dozen holes in that area of our own. So that those are underway right now, actually.
All right, John, wrap us up then just with a quick comment. Look, it says in the news release, it said in a lot of the news releases, this is a fully funded 20,000 meter program. Just remind everybody the cash position and what you're planning on ending this program with cash in the bank, and then recap all the news that's coming, please.
Sure. So $20 million Canadian cash on hand, and that was as of the last reported quarter, which was June 30th. Importantly, when you look at the program, again, we've already drilled 9,000 meters of the 20,000 meter drill campaign. So there might be another, at most $5 million US left to be spent on drilling from today onwards. So yeah, very, very healthy cash position, well funded for all of this year, well into next year. This year, we have a number of important catalysts, of course, drilling. We expect lots of news flow. We have 20 plus holes at the lab currently, and we have 3 rigs turning. So there's going to be plenty of news flow until Q1, I would say, of next year. At the same time, in parallel, we're working on an updated pre-feasibility study. That's going to be very, very important. And so that was really one of the main factors there were the positive legislative changes that were made in Argentina, that RIGI regime, which significantly reduced taxes, eliminated export duties, removed FX restrictions. As we've spoken about in the past, that has huge positive implications for the economics of our project. So we're going to be incorporating that, plus some other optimization work we're doing in parallel, putting that together and announcing an updated pre-feasibility study before year end. So sometime later in Q4, we'll be announcing that. And then at the same time, moving EIA permitting process is now in place, and that's moving forward. So lots of positive developments here. Everything's going extremely well. And of course, gold and silver prices are doing incredibly well. When you look, there's a slide in our corporate presentation that I just updated. So when you look at current spot prices, about $32 silver, $2,650 gold, the net present value of this project is about almost $900 million higher than the base case that we announced back in March. So in March, when we announced our pre-feasibility study, we had used $2,350 as your silver price assumptions and $1,850 for your gold price assumptions. And we had a base case net present value of about 670 million Canadian. Now, fast forward only a few months later, with the move up in silver and gold prices, the base case has gone from 670 million to over 1.5 billion dollars Canadian. And so clearly a very big impact there. And so with spot prices being where they're at, I think this is an extremely, extremely profitable project here. And yeah, I think that's a lot of that's going to be reflected, of course, in that updated pre-feasibility study, which should be announced in a couple months.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here for today, but we'll keep our eyes peeled for all this drilling news on tap from the ongoing 20,000 meter drill program, and also that pre-feasibility study update coming out later in the year. Yeah, that is a huge difference if you look at where spot metals prices are today. And if people that are listening in want to follow along with all the news flow that's going to be coming out of AbraSilver, definitely click on the link below this interview. It takes you right over to the company website, straight to their news section, so you too can follow along as assays are released. And Dave, John, great to have you on the show and looking forward to our next conversation.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, James.